Before we start this brief introduction to SharePoint Online, I have a confession to make. I'm actually a little bit in love with SharePoint. And the reason I love it is because it's actually possible, through SharePoint, to share documents. It's in the name, really. So previously, I'm so used to having 5 megabyte Excel spreadsheets sent to me, I have to change one cell, then forward it on to someone else in my organization. And it's horrible. It bulks up my inbox, and you get different versions of the same document everywhere. It's a terrible problem, but SharePoint solves it in a trice. Now, SharePoint isn't always the easiest thing for a non-IT expert to set up. So what I like about SharePoint Online is that it's possible for anyone, pretty much any business, to use it. But I've probably said too much, so I'm going to hand over to the real expert on this, which is Simon, who works for Microsoft and is the evangelist for SharePoint. I think I've done your job for you, Simon, but very briefly, how would you define SharePoint Online?
Well, it allows you to create a single version of the truth for documents. So very simplistically, your example of emailing around a spreadsheet, that's going to create, say if you send that to 3 people make changes, you've taken a 5 megabyte spreadsheet and turned it into 3 5 megabyte spreadsheets sitting in people's inboxes. So you instantly get to this idea of a little bit of bloat over the size of the files. But more often, you actually lose somebody's edits in the process flow. You just lose the fact that somebody made a change. You don't appreciate all the changes that everybody did. And SharePoint actually prevents you from doing that because everybody can edit the same document at the same point in time.
And then SharePoint Online, what is the real benefit that brings to small businesses?
So much of what you get in SharePoint 2010 for on-premises is there in SharePoint Online. What you really do get, though, is the fact that it's ran out of Microsoft's data centers. We're running the hardware. We're looking after those SharePoint servers. We're making sure everything's available, and we give you an uptime guarantee that there is availability there for you.
And what do you see, Connor? Your company has to integrate these software solutions, and you find real businesses are using it. And how do you think that people are using SharePoint now?
Well, traditionally, SharePoint would be sold to larger organizations simply because of the cost of implementing it and the time it takes to put it into an infrastructure. With SharePoint Online, you can have it up and running in 24 hours. It's absolutely fantastic. It's bringing enterprise-class software down to the SMEs.
And is it really that easy to implement?
SharePoint is like any platform. You have to learn it. There are plenty of free tools available, plenty of videos on YouTube, etc., etc. But again, you can turn to a partner like ourselves who have many years' experience in SharePoint, and we can help you through that process.
And how does it work in with the rest of the Office 365 system?
Again, it's seamlessly integrated. I mean, it's quite funny. Some of the customers we deal with, they actually, between Office 2010 Professional Pro Plus and SharePoint, they actually don't know which product they're actually in because they all look and feel the same. They don't know whether they're in Outlook, whether in the SharePoint workspace, or whether they're actually on a SharePoint site. So even for the user, it's a very, very good experience using familiar tools and tool sets.
And does that echo with you, David?
Well, Tim, at the risk of this becoming a SharePoint loving, I'm also a little bit in love with SharePoint. I mean, it's funny because the point Connor touched on there was the fact it's complicated to set up. There are servers involved. For quite a few years, I didn't really know what SharePoint actually did because it is immediately that the fact that the barrier to entry traditionally has been enormous, and I couldn't really quite work out how it would fit into a business and what it would do. With Office 365, it's just there. It's set up for you, and it's just there. You start using it straight away. It's completely fundamental to the workflow, and it's just awesome. I mean, it really is. And I don't use that word often, but it's just completely. It saves all of the stuff with the fragmentation of documents, and I like that phrase, a single version of the truth, which is exactly what it is. It just gives you one piece of information, it stays in one place. It doesn't get replicated anywhere, and it's fantastic. It really is. I can't praise it highly enough. It's awesome.
That's high praise indeed. So what else does it do, though? It's not just there for sharing documents, is it?
It's not. You can actually use it to create your internal intranet site. So you can have things like, very simply, having lists, having information about what's going on within your organisation as an intranet. And you can also use it to present an external face of your organisation as well, to present a corporate website to your customers. You can take as much of that as you want to as being the vanilla SharePoint experience. You can actually really customize it with design tools and make it look completely your own. It doesn't have to look like a SharePoint site. Or, if you want to make it nice and simple, you just take what comes out of the box.
And there are some very large websites that are run on SharePoint, aren't there? I'm sure you can name a couple at the top of your head.
Trying to remember current ones is tricky, but at points I think Ferrari have been running their website, and there's a few others as well. I think the Hawaii Tourist Agency at one point.
Oh, well, there you go. You can't get better than the Hawaii Tourist Agency. Okay, is there anything else that you would add, Connor, that so you think the difference that SharePoint can make to a business, and SharePoint Online in particular?
The difference SharePoint can make is like any web technology. Instead of distributing applications in a traditional manner, which was you had to go and install a client on a local laptop or a local desktop, you can run your applications as if they were a website. And in particular, when you take the power of an Excel spreadsheet and you want to just share something like the graph inside that Excel spreadsheet, you put that into SharePoint, display the graph, and now all of a sudden everybody can see that graph. They don't have to go and find the right spreadsheet, open the right spreadsheet. They just go to a web page and they can get access to that information. It's absolutely fantastic for doing that.
Mm. And actually that does remind me of one of the other thing I love a bit, and this is sounding a little bit like a loving, but Excel 2010 does have some brilliant abilities, such as the dashboard ability to give business information at a glance. So presumably that's where SharePoint Online comes in as well.
Yeah, absolutely. You can take some information in a spreadsheet and publish that directly out to your SharePoint. So people don't have to go and open up a Excel document in order to be able to get access to that information.
Okay, well I think I've confessed quite enough in this video, so we'll call a halt to it there. If you'd like an introduction to Exchange Online or to Link Online, we do have other videos covering those topics on this site.